I've been working now for 43 years on a project. I grew up in Santa Monica, California. I went to California Institute of the Arts in Valencia, and that's where all this work started. In 1972, 71, 72, I was doing experiments with color. Projected light and reflected light. So I was, for instance, I did a performance where I turned out the lights in the auditorium, and I had these color cards that painters use, and I covered the floor with these cards, and then I picked them up again. And I was interested in the reality of the color in the dark room. It's there and it's not there. I did pieces where I put these color cards on a wall, and then I projected green light on it, so it changed all the colors. I was very much interested in the statement, all I see are light patterns. That's what I was interested in. So when I'm looking at you, what my eye physically sees is light. That's all. Everything else is a construction. So if all I see is light, where does life exist within that pattern? I was in Easter time, 1973, I was driving back from a holiday in Santa Barbara with some friends from school. In the car, I was just looking out the window. At this time, I was only working with light. And I had this idea, which was a detail. And the detail was of a car's tire. And a car that never existed and never would exist, a fictional car. And yet it was a detail, so it points to things that are happening outside the frame. And so I could ask the question, who's driving the car? Where's the car going? What time of day is it? Did it rain? Is it December or is it June? Is it how many people in the back seat of the car? How fast is the car going? So all of these very practical questions that act about the context of the picture. So this was completely different from the work that I was doing. It was a kind of a big light bulb. We all get these light bulbs. I did not understand what the connection was, but my feeling, and I think that's what we're talking about here, was that there's more there. The next thing I came up with was a stick figure. And the stick figure was in a room, and there was a clock, a calendar, and a plant. And the stick figure, I named him Glenn. So Glenn was doing different things in this room. He's an artist like myself, and I gave him a name because I wanted to give the picture a life. I was interested in life in the pictures, and I was interested in Glenn. I was in a class, the John Baldessari's class, called Post-Studio Art, and I did not have a studio. I was an undergrad, I didn't have any studio whatsoever. So this was my studio. The studio was a fiction that existed with Glenn. And he dealt with his own physical reality the way that I was dealing with it in relationship to light. So he was exploring the notions of gravity, sound, smell, taste, emotions. I went through a psychology book, and I went through a biology book and a physics book. And he explored the world inside the picture. The most important thing that Glenn did was to pinch his arm. Basically, I was interested in the pain that Glenn felt when he pinched his arm, because I could feel it. That is where we connected. So that was a curious thing to wanted to do. I wanted to prove that stick figures live lives. This all came up very quickly in 1973. The next thing I drew when I was creating life was that I drew a dead stick figure, because I was interested in the difference between life and death, and so the dead stick figure and the living stick figure. And I wanted at one point to draw a real dead person. My relationship to death grew. I realized that it was very difficult to find dead people, to have that relationship with the body. And I eventually found one in Yale University. A friend of mine was going to medical school, and he had a cadaver. And for the entire lesson, he had been with this cadaver for several months. The face was covered in gauze, so there was no face. And he told me, we just uncovered the face, because that's what I was interested in. I was interested in the person, so the face was key for me. The reason that the face was covered is that they wanted to objectify the body. They said that the body was not human, that every cell in that body had been transformed through formaldehyde. So it was no longer a human being, it was now a model of a human being, in order to disassociate themselves with the person that the cadaver once was. I was most definitely interested in the person. If I named Glenn, a stick figure Glenn, I was very interested in the person that exists in the body separate from life. So I went there very quickly, and I went into the room, and all the bodies were one after the other. I went to his body, and he was on his stomach. And we turned him over, because I was interested in the face. They were starting to do the dissection of the back of the brain. So we flipped him over, the two of us, and he was like this, and we flipped him. His right arm fell off because they had dissected the joint. So I put the arm back, and then what I did to the cadaver is what Glenn did to himself. I covered his eyes, I shouted in his ear, I put my hand in his mouth, I slapped his face, I blew the hair on the back of the head, and I pinched his arm. Very important. The most important thing I did was to pinch his arm. In a funny sense, to wake him up or to acknowledge the fact that he was dead. Whenever you see in the movies, when they're in a dream, they say, pinch me, pinch me. I want to know if I'm sleeping or not. I don't understand this. Why pinching someone would somehow create reality, but that they do. At this point, I was going into pictures. I wanted to prove that stick figures live lives. And one of the key things that I became very much involved with was my dreams. If I was dealing with a fictional universe here, I was also involved with my dream universe. I remember walking, and I would remember, I'd wake up, and I would remember details from a particular dream. So one of them was me walking down the street and noticing that the plants were growing up between the stones in the sidewalk, and that the sidewalk was made of concrete, and that there were flowers and pieces of grass. I was interested in the grass. I wasn't so much interested in everything else, but the grass I was interested in. James Turrell, a famous American artist, is interested in the light source in the dream. So we know there's a sun in there somewhere because there's light, and I can see the light, and I can see the pictures. But we need light to see it. So where is the energy? Where is the light in the dreams? So as I was walking down, I was very much aware of being someplace else. And I was very interested in that place that I was. In a way, I was stepping into the image world, where the world is not based necessarily on physical law, but is created to emulate physical law. I remember having an argument with my father. I was in a small house with low ceilings, and he was standing there. My father was a famous painter. I grew up in an artist's family. His name is Matt Mullican, and he was an abstract painter. And I was having an argument with him. He was standing there, and I was here, and I said, this is a dream, and it's real. I can feel the floor move when I stamp my foot. And he says, no, it's not. It's a dream. This is all a fiction. And I said, no, but it's real. It's real. And he was talking back to me, saying, no, it's not real. And then I remember, it's real. It's real. It's real. And as I did this, I could feel the ground move, that there was actually space underneath my feet. So at the same time as this was happening, I was taking photographs of where I lived. I was living in an apartment uptown. This is still 1973, the fall. Everything happens at once. And I was taking photographs of my refrigerator, my bed, the TV, the bathroom, the cabinet in the bathroom. It was a house that I was house sitting, a very fancy New York City pre-war apartment, like 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. And I took photographs of the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, the bathroom. I was documenting my life, not as if it was a fiction, but I was very much interested in representing reality, details of reality. So you could say that if I was taking a photograph, it would be here. So if I have a person, a photograph of a person, and there they are, and then I would have a drawing like in a cartoon. Put a person there. This is a cartoon character. Another thing that I was doing was that I was cutting up details of comic books. I was interested in the trees, or the sky, or the ground in a comic. I wasn't so much interested in Superman, but I was interested in the sky that Superman was flying in. I was interested in the place that he exists in, that reality, that he is there, that I am living in with him. So one of the things, since I was involved with the dead person, I collected dead comic book characters. Comic book characters that had once lived but that were no longer living. So I was collecting these small little snippets from comics, and that would be here. So that would be, so this is photo, and this is comic, and then this would be, I would say, a stick figure inside a room, and I'll call him Glenn. And then I have a jump. Then I have the stick figure outside the room. Big difference between this and this. I can even call him Glenn, but I won't. Because when you go from here to here, there's a world here, and there's no world here. Then the next one would be a sign like you have on the bathroom. It's just a sign that represents all men and no singular man. It has been abstracted. For me to call him Glenn, it becomes funny. Because Glenn does not like that. Glenn is a different person. Another thing is that, okay, so Glenn reduces. I want to say, so what is the most direct, simple representation of a person? So I have it as a head and a body. That seemed to be, and I can actually add legs, or I can access eyes, but basically it's the head and the body. That's the important point. And the head of the body, I did a piece where I put a piece of wood and I rested it on a pillow. When you see the pillow, through association, if that was the title of this piece, was Sleeping Child. So we automatically become the wood. I was waiting for a bus to go downtown on Lexington Avenue, and there was a woman that was waiting for the bus as well. But I could tell by the way she was walking that she was following somebody. Our bodies are so, we show ourselves so clearly that I could tell by her posture that she was not alone. And so I was curious. So I followed her on the bus, and I sat behind her. And within 3 blocks, she starts talking to this invisible person next to her. And I was interested in this projection, because she's not projecting into a photo, nor a comic, nor a sign, but she's projecting over here, the circle, square, triangle, where there's no necessary code that she's following. She is in her brain talking. Now this place over here is similar to what I do when I go into a trance state. I'm interested how we see pictures and how we feel pictures. I explore that with the trance. The first time, it was a performance that I did in 1973, where a friend of mine held up a picture of a Piranesi print of an arch. And he was holding it like this, and I sat down and I looked inside that picture and I projected my mind's eye into the picture and walked into it. As I walked into it, I became 11 years old. I became 14 years old. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. My father was working on site. It had rained the night before, and I was visiting him, and I was going for a walk, and I had to run some errands for my mother, who I was still living at home, which was a little bit strange because I was older. But I did that, I met him, and at one point I climbed a hill, which you don't see in the picture, and I looked down at it, and I could see the top of the arch. There were great puddles because it had rained the night before. And at that point, the man took a match to the picture, and it all went up in smoke. There was a piece of ashes on the floor. And then I felt the heat on my face, and I kind of slid down the hill, and I ran home inside the picture. The next time I did a performance, I had myself hypnotized to be 5 years old. Actually, I started at 5 months, but at 5 years, I was drawing pictures in a trance in front of an audience. And one of the curious things that happened was that I became 2 people. I became my mind's eye and my body's eye. I became both. And the weird thing is, when you're in a trance, you think that you are in control, and you are in control, you are awake, but your psyche has been split. And so here I am in my head, looking at myself act, and I'm saying, God, you're doing fantastically. So as my body is doing the stuff of a 5-year-old, I'm in my head as a 25-year-old saying, this is really weird. Look what you're doing. Look what you can do with your foot. And that has no effect on my body. My body's reality and my personal intellectual reality were separate. And that you become a passenger in your own body as you do it. That is to take media to the extreme. Okay, that's what that does. So I have this thing where it starts with photos, and then it goes from here, and then it goes into TV, and then film, and then I had theater, dance, music, and then I had world framed, and then I had world unframed, and then I had nothing. And then that connects. So it's a big circle. All my exhibitions in the 70s followed this line, and I had pictures up in the space following this. So this would be a gallery space, and my pictures would follow this line. And this became my work. One of the things that happened at the same time as I was doing this was that I did a drawing. Oops. I did a drawing of a place inside here, and it was an object from a dream, an object which was a telephone, and then I had an object in front of me which was a magnifying glass, and then I had a fictional object which was this strange H-type object thing, and then I had an object from a cosmology, which now a cosmology is in a sense, when I was a child, I believed that before I was born, because I saw a photograph of myself, and the photograph, I was not in the photo in 1949. I just didn't exist. So I asked my parents, so where am I? I must have been 6 or 7 years old when I asked. So where am I in this picture? And they said, you were not born yet. I said, what do you mean I was not born yet? And I said, but I've always been here. And so I said, so where was I asked them. They said, I don't know. I don't know where you were. You weren't alive. I said, golly, how do you do that? So I said, okay, so as a child, I made up a place where I am on a conveyor belt, very mechanistic, like a robot in a sense. And this is before I'm born. And there were chutes. And one of the chutes said Mullican on it. And that chute went into my life. And so I go and I choose that and I go into my life. As I live my life, there is fate looking at a TV. I believe this is a child as well. So there's a big lever, and fate is looking at me on TV and pulling this lever, and this is my birth, 1951, and then I won't say when I die. I'm not going to say it. And then he is seeing me, and he controls my life as I live my life. So in a sense, this answers the question, where was I before I was born, and why did things happen the way they do when I live my life? Why did I stub my toe? Why did the dog bite me? Why is it raining? All those questions. At my death, since I was involved with death so much, I decided that I made up the figure of death. And that's death. And fate meets death. And the semicircular corridor. And they meet. And they talk in numbers. And they decide if I to go up to heaven or down to hell. Now my hell is not bad and my heaven is not good. My heaven is the subject and my hell is the object. It's the split between, as with the cadaver in that room, there's the body and then there's the individual. There's the life and there's the body. And the two are intertwined. And this splits them up like a Y shape. Now I reinvented the cosmology in 1982. This was in 1973. I redid it. And I've been doing it ever since. When I was going to Cal Arts, the only taboo, I could do anything. I could strip myself naked doing whatever I wanted anywhere in the school. I could do anything. The one thing I couldn't do, the one thing that somehow people would start going like this was anything to do with the spirit. Anything to do with the cosmos. Anything to do with the self in that sense, I couldn't do. I felt, and I still feel that way. There were dealers that I was going to work with that would work with my flags and my signs and my science, but would not work with the cosmology, and with heaven and hell and God and demons and angels, all that stuff, which is problem. It's still a problem. I still have problems with it. So now I have, in a way, this chart, and I have this chart. So there's the chart of media and the chart of life, or what happens beyond life. Every culture on the planet does something like this. And every artwork in the history of art, up to recently, had to deal with this, man's place in reality or the cosmos. We placed ourselves in it. You'll notice that when I talk with my eyes closed, and my kids have a problem with this. I've worked with hypnosis for the last 35 years, almost 40 years. And it's my brain and the way that I am, it has to do with concentration. I close my eyes to concentrate. But I've worked with hypnosis. There's an aspect of the hypnosis which has come up recently where when I am performing, I did a performance in Geneva, and it was all about not being able to throw something away. That was the subject of the performance. And then I asked the person who invited me to perform, what did the audience think of me? And he said they thought that I was autistic. I said, what? I'm not autistic. Why would they think I was autistic? And she says, yeah, that's what they thought. They think you're autistic. And then I've had people doctors have seen the videos. There was once I give a lecture in Linz at the Lentos Museum, and this guy comes up to me and he says, where did you study autism? How do you know how to act? How did you know that? And he was almost pulling he was really pissed off. He wanted to hit me. And I said, oh, okay, why? What's the problem? There's no studying. This is innate. Where I'm going in my work, it is innate. It is there. It is in me. It is with me all the time. So that person, I call him that person, the person that comes up in my hypnosis, this character, that person, is innate. And then I explained to him that I am trying to understand what it means to not only live, but what it means to think. What is a thought? I have heard that we think in words. I don't think. Then I have heard that we think in pictures. Now I know that I do not think in words. I know that for certain. Words enter my thoughts, but not predominantly speaking. When I'm playing tennis, I am not thinking in words. There's just, everything's way too fast. And I'm not thinking in pictures. So if I'm not thinking in words, and I'm not thinking in pictures, what do I think in? What is it? Where am I, and what is it that I'm doing? And when I tell people, they say, well, you're thinking. That's all, thoughts. But thoughts are not in pictures, and thoughts are not in words. And I'm still asking this question. So this is what I told the doctor that had his hands like this. And he said, oh, that's what you're doing, and I understand. And I said, look, it's innate. If I go down, if I have mycology, if I go down and I go down, when you go into a trance, they always tell you go deep, deep, deep. You're going deeper and deeper and deeper. So I say afterwards, I said, why don't I go high, high, higher? Couldn't I do the opposite? Couldn't I go up instead of down? But to go into subconscious is to go down, apparently. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be going up as well. My last performance was in Sydney, in a trance state, and I became Jacques Cousteau. I was talking about Jacques Cousteau. I was so deep, it was dark, and I couldn't see anything, and I could barely feel anything, and I said, this is boring. I'm sorry, but I'm so deep, I can't do much else. And this was a kind of, but it was a terrible performance in the sense that 3/4 of the audience left. They were so upset, they couldn't be in the same room with me. And this is what happens. In the performance where I had, when they thought I was autistic, they couldn't leave. It was too small a space. There was no way for them to get out, so they were stuck. But in this one, everyone could leave freely, and they all did. So I'm trying to understand several things. One is, what is an artist? What is a poet? What does it mean to be alive? What is reality? and feelings. These are accepted terms, but we simply have to look at them. That they're just interesting. So let's do, I'm going to quickly, so you know the context a little bit. I have this slide. Can someone help me here? What do I do? I just press?
I don't.
Can you do this? It's not going. I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to go through my slide. This is, and I'm just going to go through very quickly. Maybe I can do it with this. Can I go with this? Okay, just let me do it. It's always a problem. Okay, now it works. Oh, but I have something else going on here. Okay, this is my stuff as it was, you know, it doesn't really matter. This is just my room. This is head and body. That's me going into the picture and doing another picture inside it. I work with virtual reality. This is way before virtual reality. This is 1973. There's the cadaver you can see there. This is an exhibition I had in that process. That's a drawing of the entrance to hell, the edge of heaven, an angel's wing. Going into language, I was trying to understand. People said that underneath everything there was a word, so I challenged that, making it a picture, a sign, an international sign. There's sky, heaven, sky, ground, and hell, head and body. That's that one with the sign. That's just me doing some performances at school. More performances, more performances. That's death pulling the soul out of a dead man. A volunteer from the audience played death. That's a complete human skeleton, which I own. Every piece, but it's not put in order. That's me in a trance state doing a self-portrait. That's what I look like. I mean, it's a very strange self-portrait. I look like an alien from a 50s movie. That's the dead man and the doll. It's very important, the two go together. And of course the doll's eyes are open. That's pinching the dead man's arm as a key. And my hand in his mouth and blowing his hair. These are photographs around me. Details from a comic book. Dead comic book characters. Two stick figures, pricking his finger, feeling pain, and then this one, which is weird, which is crossing him off. This is Glenn thinks about the time he hurt himself skiing. This is 73. The cold inhibited his sense of smell, so I'm going into the picture. This is the old cosmology and the new one. This is the soul being stretched between a demon and an angel. This is that order that I talked about. This is a headache done in plasticine. This is a stuffed figure. I made 3 of them and I slept with them. I had a person, a head and body, and just a body. This is a sign broken up, head broken up, a sleeping child. Again, this progression. Bulletin boards. I didn't even talk about that, but just the very first, just organizing pictures. Organizing pictures again. This is where you have a subject above. There are 5 worlds in my work, and you can see them. There's the elements, which is materiality, then the world unframed, what's around us, then the arts, which translate, and then language, black and white, and then the subjective on top. So at the bottom is materiality without meaning, and at the top is meaning without materiality. They're the bookends. And here you have it represented in these charts. And here are a bunch of other charts representing the same thing. And then I did it on a ball, glass ball. So there's no up or down. And then I made photograms of them. Here's the signs. Signs again. Mullican life, Mullican demon and angel. God. The subject of God. First show, married in a gallery. I go into a city and generator, and these are flags at the magasin. So the flags themselves, the signs become architecture. This is the beginning of virtual reality. This is 1990. This is the Alexanderplatz train station with my cosmology, my God and heaven and so forth. And this is the National Gallery with my signs there. Fantastic, fantastic building. This is 1986. This is with a Cray supercomputer. I entered the picture in with my mind's eye in 1973, and then in 1986 I could actually go into it physically with this digital representation. One of the very, very early representations of virtual environments. This is, again, this is the 80s. This is 1.5 million polygons are in this database. These are details, details, details. This is a virtual with the French Ministry of Culture. I could walk inside, literally walk inside the picture and move things around. So no longer was I dreaming it, I was actually in it. But you are actually in it when you dream. We just differentiate these contexts. This is a show at the Haus der Kunst. Rocks as they were, and then I made them as a 3D printer. 1991, 3D printing, one of the very first, probably one of the first artworks done with that technology. These are all atmospheres, default atmospheres. Again, this is a computer. This is 1992 Documenta. Again, the architecture is becoming more important. Hirshhorn Museum. This is rubbings, which I make. Rubbings. Frottage is what they are. They're all prints, and they're all paintings, and they're all drawings. They're all of them and none of them. Stained glass, I work in glass. Stained glass. I work in concrete. This is models, MIT project. Models outside, monument. This is Zug, Switzerland. This is, if you go to this place, there's a monument in etched granite, which is right next door to it. You can walk, and rollerbladers love, and skateboarders love this thing, because it's all granite. This is another granite, and this is Bath, and this is a boiler at PS1. This is that person, and what that person says, and this you can start to see it. You see, he's different. It says, I love to work for truth and beauty is in the middle. And this is this maze that I did at the Hirshhorn, at the Ludwig Museum. You can see it, starting with numbers. So there's this character, which I don't understand. I always know what I'm doing. I can talk about it for hours and hours and hours. I do not know what he is thinking. When I am him, I have no contextual information. I am simply out. I'm out. I do not know. I do not know where I am. I do not know what I'm thinking. So he's very important because he's outside. If we're always inside, he goes outside. But when you go outside, there's no references. So what are you going to feel? You don't even know what you're looking at or feeling when you're out there. This is the opening of the show at the Haus der Kunst. These are these big flags from the National Gallery. That shows how much bigger the Haus der Kunst is than the National Gallery. And you can see the systems upon systems upon systems, which is fun. I enjoy that. It's just a lot of fun to actually have this different worlds coexisting, and that one jumps from one to the other. And that's that.